As I'm reading through your work this morning, I'm looking at the Juneteenth assignment as a backdrop for the theory work that you do in task two. It comes up a lot about when we talk about assessment. So this will be a big focus of next year. But I wanted to show you how you can create data from your students' work when they engage in a in an assessment where they're talking with each other or writing. Um, a lot of times rubrics turn into ways for the students to get a certain grade instead of helping you make decisions about where they are. So this is sort of like me doing learning trajectories a little bit and assessing. So this is on the Juneteenth activity. So here we are. Here's the kind of the things that were happening there. We looked at behaviorism. We did a learning trajectory, and then you were asked to look up some terms and engage with some other scholarship. So when I looked through the questions and think about where we are in the semester and in the MAT, these are the three things that I feel like I'm able to assess. How does the student discuss theory? And you can see how this is a good kind of precursor to the task two. So when I look at your task two, I'll already know a bit, or I can kind of project how so-and-so is going to be able to do this with task two, given how they did it right here. And I'll be able to start layering those assessments. So I want to see, how does student one talk about assessment? And on this one, I just did a 1 to 3 scale because as I read it, it's like, yeah, that's really good. I couldn't really ask for anything more for a student at this place. This person doesn't really need my instruction. They are learning on their own. That's kind of what a 3 means for me. Okay. A 2 would be this person is making some strides. They are making gains. It's sort of like a developing proficiency. They need more practice. They are getting this thing. And then 1 would be they are too certain about the wrong things, or they went about it a wrong way, or they don't really understand what it means to talk about theory. And so they need more ways to tap into their own knowledge and experience, because what they think they're doing doesn't line up with this practice. Does that make sense? So I go back to the idea of the beginner. The beginner has a lot of knowledge. And so if they're a 1, that means that they're not being able to tap that knowledge effectively. Okay? You see how they're not a 1 in the sense of a bad grade or something. It tells me where they are developmentally in this practice, in this skill, and maybe with concepts associated with this stuff. Okay, so then for moving over to learning trajectory, this one I thought needed to be broken out so that I could do it in a more kind of rigorous manner. And so I just said it's going to be 1 point if the student names states in those in the beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Do they characterize the state of that person? So my dog knows not to come in the room when told. That's the positive statement. You wouldn't get that point if you talked about what you were going to do, because then it would be like a teaching or activity trajectory rather than a learning trajectory. So it's about the learner for 1 point. And then the second one, I misspelled assumptions. 1 would be like if there are very strong or very problematic instructional developmental assumptions. And then the third one would be, are they getting the standard? Like, do they understand the standard? Are they able to interpret it, slice it up effectively? So anyway, that one, learning trajectory, I scored with more of a kind of a point system, whereas the other one I did in a more strictly developmental. What are they able to do kind of as in a more generic, or not generic, holistic kind of way. And then the same really on the last one, when you look up mirror neurons or the Bobo doll experiment or the Ash conformity studies, how do they learn from other voices? Do they feel comfortable using other people's words and using other people's ideas, or does that trip them up? It's important for me to know that, right? Because it affects the kinds of next activities that I will do, and it affects the kind of support that I will offer. It is part of me knowing my students. I hope that makes sense. I need to know how comfortable this person is learning from people who have been published, learning about ideas that they had never encountered before. What are their tricks and moves to assimilate those ideas? Did they lose their own voice when they talk about it? Okay. So here, back to kind of a holistic grading, a 3 would be the student is very comfortable and pretty, they're able to maintain their own voice as they engage with other voices, and they're able to find, see what is strong and not so strong, maybe in other people's ideas. And then in, 2, maybe they can do that sometimes, and they can, other times they're just not able to do it, or they're able to do it up at a level that shows that they're in there, but they need more practice. And then a 1 would be like something is preventing them from tapping their voice, from using their own experience, from mobilizing their own knowledge to engage with this other teacher, this other educator. So that's an example of doing assessment that really has nothing to do with the grade book. It really has to do with me designing instruction. Okay? This student 1 has a 3, a 1, and a 3. That's not going to be exemplary, although it's basically exemplary in 2 out of the 3, so it's going to be a proficient. It is going to go in the grade book, but it's not really about the grade book. The student did a great job, wrote beautifully, but I need to be assessing that person in ways to support their learning, not just to pat them on the back and say, hey, great job, you turned it in on time and you wrote a lot of words, right? My responsibility as an educator goes way beyond that. Okay, I hope that's helpful. This is certainly fun to make this.